Good evening. It's good to be, even if it's just virtual, in order to study God's Word. As we are diving once again into Joshua, and we left last time the priest in a precarious situation. They're standing in the middle of the Jordan River. Of course, it's on dry ground, but there is water all around them. And so we're going to find out what's happening. Before we do, let's pray. God, thank you so much for this day, another day to worship you, another day to praise your name, another day to be able to know you a little bit more. And we just ask that you would bless us, that you would um, help us to see and understand and know not only what you did with Joshua and with Israel, but to know you more. Really, that's our goal in all of this, so that we can come to know you a little bit more. And it's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. All right, so the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. This is where we are. And so we start with chapter 4. So we're in Joshua, the 4th chapter, and let's find out what happens. After the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua, choose 12 men from the people, one man from each tribe, and command them, take 12 stones from this place in the middle of the Jordan where the priest's feet are standing, and carry them with you, and set them down at a place where you spend the night. So Joshua summoned the 12 men selected from the Israelites, one man from each tribe, and said to them, go across to the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you lift a stone onto his shoulder, one for each of the Israelite tribes, so that this will be a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask, what do these stones mean to you? You should tell them, the waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant. When they crossed the Jordan's waters were cut off. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites. Now, we're going to stop right there just for a second. Stephanie and I have a friend, and she has a rock garden. And what we would do, of course, we love to travel. We love to go to different places. We love to experience different things. So every time we would go someplace different, or every time we would go to a different location, one of the things that we would do is grab a rock, a pretty good, nice sized rock, throw it in the back of the Jeep, and carry it all the way back to Kentucky. And so we did that for years and years and years. And we found out later on that she did have this rock garden, and it reminded her she had some rocks of her own of places she had been and things that she had done. But on the back on the underside of it, she would write down where it was that we had went, and so it was so she could see the different colors, the different shapes, the different things of where all these places have been, and kind of living through us, she was able to travel to a lot of places that she had never been. She had a little piece of that land, a little piece of that landscape with her forever. And so, as I've been studying this, I couldn't help but think of Cindy with this, because she loved her rock garden. Now, what I have in front of us are rocks that we collected. I have a plan for them, and one day I'll figure out what I'm going to do with them, or maybe the plan will come to fruition. But what we did was last summer we took another road trip, and the road trip that we went on is we had a goal that we would go see all 5 of the Great Lakes. And so we went and we saw all 5. And in fact, one of the lakes we had to go almost an hour and a half out of our way. We were there to see the Great Lakes, so it wasn't really out of our way. But it was a detour where we had to go up and then come back down. It wasn't like we could just go around as part of the trip. But it was so cool because, I mean, you see these rocks, they're all so very different. I mean, you have this real black smooth one, you got a red one, you have one that has I mean, they're all so different, and they all come from a different lake. And every time I look at them, they kind of make me happy. Every time I look at them, I think about that trip. I think about the fun that we had. I think about staying at a buffalo ranch and hearing the buffalo grunt outside of our window at the place that we were staying. I think about Niagara Falls. I think about all that fun that we had that whole time. We even saw a Jeep store. I mean, a store just for Jeeps. It was awesome. It was totally awesome. And so it served as memories for us. What we have here, the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan, water on the right and the left of them, and everybody has gone on. And the priests are just kind of like, okay, what do we do now? Well, God has a plan for them, because as long as the Ark of the Covenant is there, the waters will be receding. Now, the reason is, remember, the Ark of the Covenant is the symbol. It is the kind of the visual representation of God's presence. So whenever they had the Ark of the Covenant, it represented God was with them, and that God's power was being demonstrated there in the Jordan River. And so God wanted them to remember this event. This event was going to be significant for them. And so notice what it said in verse 1. The entire nation goes across. And then God comes to Joshua after the entire nation's gone across. 12 men from the people, one from each tribe, and so one from every single one of the tribes, they were to take 12 stones. Now, notice what they did. They told them, go into the Jordan River, take 12 stones, bring them out, and set them at your camp. Now, if it's for me and they chose me, I would choose something like this. It's a decent size. It's, I might even go this size. Notice what he did. In verse 4, he summons the 12 men. They selected from the Israelites one man from each tribe, and he tells each of you is to lift a stone onto his shoulder. Now, how silly would it look if they grabbed a stone like this, put it up on their shoulder, and said, "Oh man, let me cross"? Well, that's kind of ridiculous. These things were huge. The reason they had to put them on their shoulder is because they had to carry the weight of the stones. And so they had the weight of the stones up on their shoulder. They are carrying them across and grab them from the middle of the Jordan. And what he says, you're going to go and you're going to take them at your camp. They're going to be there. And one day, your children are going to ask you a question. One day, your children are going to ask you about those stones. And they're going to ask, what do those mean to you? I mean, you're looking at these rocks right here. For you, they're just rock. They're just, you may think they're interesting shapes, different colors, different sizes. They're interesting to look at, but they don't hold any sentimental value to you. They don't hold any inspirational value to you. For me, these are special. For me, they mean something to us because they represent a trip. They represent an experience. They represent a time in our life in which we got to go see all 5 of the Great Lakes. I mean, how awesome. The children are going to go to their parents and they're going to ask the question, what do those stones mean to you? Now, it'd be interesting to hear their answers because their answers can go one of 2 ways. It could be just very factual. It could be, well, Joshua told us to go into the middle of the Jordan, and so we went to the middle of the Jordan River. It was dry ground at that time, and so we had to go find a rock. We had to hoist it up on our shoulder. We had to bring it out and bring it here, and it's to remind us that God was with us and what God did for us. Okay. Even just the facts is pretty incredible. Even just the facts are pretty remarkable, mind-blowing. Wait. What do you mean the middle of the Jordan River? Did you swim down there? That would just more questions going on. Now, the other way that they would say it is that it would be a story. It wouldn't be facts. It would be an experience. And they would talk about the fact of how God had brought them out of Egypt and how that their great-grandparents had faced this similar situation of facing the Red Sea, and how God had used the great leader Moses, how the Red parted, and how everybody, over 2 million of the Israelites, crossed on dry land. Then the bad guys, Pharaoh's armies, were coming after them, and they tried to do the same thing. And then God had the waters to come back and drown the Egyptians. They would tell them of the story of how they wandered in the wilderness and how God provided for them quail, pheasants, manna. They would talk about how water came from a rock. They would tell them stories about how God had given them this promised land, and now they were facing an obstacle of a river yet again. And God made a way. God parted the waters yet again, and they crossed on the dry land. God made a way for us to cross on the dry land, and everybody got across it. And Joshua told us, go get this rock, so that every time we look at it, we remember that God was with us, and that God provided for us, and that God made a way for us, and that God will do anything that He can do in order to make a way. I can imagine more often than not, that's the story that's being told. Not the factual one, but the experiential one. Not the one that's cold and just filled with times and dates and places, but also filled with emotion and meaning. He tells them what they should tell them. Verse 7. The waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant. When they crossed the Jordan's waters were cut off. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites. When God showed up, the waters went away. When God's presence was felt, the waters parted. And as a result, God saved His people and made a way for them to inherit the promises that He had given them. So, that's what He tells them to do. Still, priests are still in the middle of the Jordan at this point. They haven't actually done it yet. He's just telling them to do it. So, verse 8. The Israelites did just as Joshua commanded them. The 12 men took the stones from the middle of the Jordan, one for each of the Israelite tribes, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to the camp and set them down there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, where the priests who had carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing. The stones are there to this day. Isn't that amazing to think about? Because they are there. The stones are there. They're monuments. And it's a reminder of the fact that this is where God's presence saved us. There's stones on the bank. There's stones in the middle. And they're organized. They're situated. Because God had His people do that. Verse 10. And the priests carrying the ark continued standing. Those poor guys. Those poor guys are still stuck in the middle of the Jordan River. Standing in the middle of the Jordan River until everything was completed that the Lord had commanded Joshua to tell the people, in keeping with all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people hurried across, and after everyone had finished crossing, the priest with the ark of the Lord crossed in the sight of the people. Okay, we're going to stop right there because the next verse is pretty significant as well. What we have here, so finally the priests are there doing all this stuff, and one thing struck me. It says the people hurried across. Imagine it was a scary situation. I imagine it was a stretch of their faith. Excuse me. A stretch of their faith do this, to go across when you're seeing water on either side of it. And so God is with us. Why are you guys in a hurry? Look at what he's done. As long as he's here, this can't bother us. And so a couple of things. The priests are carrying the ark. They continue standing there until everything's done. They don't waver. What an incredible demonstration of faith by these priests. And they are standing in the middle of the Jordan River on dry ground. Secondly, he did everything the Lord commanded Joshua in keeping with all that Moses had commanded Joshua. Now, this is interesting because Moses didn't tell Joshua, you need to, when you get to the Jordan River, now you make sure that you take these stones and you put them in. What did Moses tell Joshua? Well, Moses basically obey God. Obey him to the fullest. Because what happens if you don't? Moses is a pretty good example of what happens if you don't. Not here right now because he didn't. The people hurried across, and after everyone's finished, then the priest crossed. And notice it said, in the sight of the people. It's like everybody gathered around because these priests are the last ones to go. And I think there's a couple things happening here. Number one, I think they want to see the water kind of crash into each other. Once again, what an awesome sight, what an awesome thing just to be able to see and experience. But number two, these guys, how awesome is this that they stood there in the middle the whole time? And now they're crossing, and it's almost like a hero's welcome across the. Everybody's excited about the fact that they made it across, and what a demonstration of their faith. Now let's look at verse 12. I told you it was important. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh went into battle formation. Look where? In front of the Israelites, as Moses had instructed them. About 40,000 equipped for war crossed to the plains of Jericho in the Lord's presence. Now, the reason this is significant, because the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, they had already received their land. Remember that. Remember all the way back to the beginning. Joshua, the very first thing he had to do was to come out. The Lord told him, be strong and courageous. Very first thing he had to do was deliver bad news. Guys, you can't occupy your land. Your wives, your children, your livestock, your homes, everything. It's there, but you can't occupy your land. You have to fight with us. And what was their response? Their response is, we're all in. And in fact, if anyone doesn't fight, they're to be put to death. If anyone doesn't do this, then they need to be put out of this thing, because we are all in this. We will do as you say. Joshua, we just ask one thing: you be strong and courageous. And so here they are. It's interesting because it talks about the fact that they went into battle formation in front of the Israelites as Moses had instructed them. So in one aspect of this, they're kind of put up there. But it really kind of reads like they went up there willingly. Like they were saying, come on, guys, we got our land. We know God will do this. We are the examples. We are the living examples that God will provide, that God has given us this land. We got our land. Let's go get yours. And so they're all going to be there. They're leading in the battle in order so that everybody can get their land. And so they go into battle formation, and then 40,000 of them. And they cross to the plain of Jericho. And notice, in the Lord's presence, God is with them. God is with them. God's presence is all around them. And they are going, and it's everything that we see here talks about how there's going to be victorious and how they're going to occupy the land and how it's going to be theirs. And so let's look at what happens. So on that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him throughout his life, as they had revered Moses. Now, this is really interesting because what you have here is that they said they were all in with Joshua. They said, in the very first chapter, we're with you. We will do everything that you've asked us to do, just like Moses. We're going to look at you as we did Moses, and we need you to be strong and courageous. Up to this point, they were still with Joshua, but in the back of their mind, they kind of had this lingering doubt. They kind of had this nagging feeling, well, what if he's not up to the task? It's no fault of the Israelites. It's no fault of who. I mean, it's just human nature. Joshua hasn't proved himself at all. All they knew about Joshua up to this point, he was Moses' right-hand man. He fought some great battles, but he had never actually led anything up until now. Now, he has just done one of the most miraculous things ever, just like Moses did. So now it's not like, oh, Moses was great and awesome, but now we have Joshua. He's good too. Yeah, we have Joshua, and we like him okay. He's going to be all right. No. Now it's like, okay, we got us a great one. And we didn't just get us a good one. We got us a great one. He's no longer Moses here and Joshua here. They are right there together in the people's eyes. And they look at him and they say, okay, we will follow you through the walls of Jericho. We will follow you to the ends of the earth. We are with you. We see that God is with you. We saw what you did. You led us. We're here. We are with you 100%. So, who elevates him to this point? God does. Who parted the waters? God did. Who instructed about the stones? God did. Who led the people into battle? God did. So God is elevating Joshua. God is elevating Joshua, which is the way it has to be. If you try to exalt, remember what the Bible says: he who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Joshua humbles himself before God and obeys God. And as a result, God exalts Joshua. So he's exalted into the eyes of Israel. Verse 15. So the Lord told Joshua. That's another good verse you can memorize. So now we have Jesus wept. He said, and the Lord told Joshua. You have 3 Bible verses memorized just like that. All right? So the Lord told Joshua. Verse 16. Command the priest who carried the ark of the testimony to come up from the Jordan. All right, guys. You almost feels like this. It feels like we're missing somebody. It feels like there should be more people than this. It feels like we should have more people around us. Something feels like it's not. Oh, wait, we forgot the priest. Bring the priest up. So Joshua commanded the priests, come up from the Jordan. And when the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant, came up from the middle of the Jordan. Up until this point, they were coming from the middle to the edge. Their feet stepped out on solid ground. The water of the Jordan resumed their course and flowing all over the bank. The second they left the Jordan, they got out of the river. All of a sudden, the waters rushed. And not only did the waters rush in and fill back up, but it overflowed, it flooded. God just kind of showing, there's no excusing this. There's no rationalizing this. There's no explaining this away. This is not a flash flood. This is me. I held the waters back, and then I brought them together even more than they were before. And so God is working, He's moving, He's doing this. And then in verse 19, the people came up from the Jordan to the 10th day, on the 10th day of the first month, and camped at Gilgal on the eastern limits of Jericho. Now, remember, all this going to get Jericho, all of this started in chapter 2. We are in chapter 4. Finally, it looks like we're making some progress. We are sure taking our sweet old time getting to Jericho. But remember what we talked about. The people have to be prepared. Before the battle could ever be won, the people had to be prepared. This is part of their preparation. So the people come up and they set up on the eastern limits of Jericho. They're not even to Jericho yet. God's not done preparing them. Remember our principle. Remember one of the things that we have learned over and over and over again, and man, are we learning it in spades during this time. God is not in a hurry. He grows things. What a dumb lesson to learn. It's true. I mean, God is not in a hurry. He grows things. And so this time of us waiting kind of shows us God is kind of preparing and getting ready and building. We were talking about this today before this COVID stuff hit. I mean, there was such excitement, and we started to see God move in us while we were all here, and God was moving, and then it seemed like this thing hit, and any normal time it would have felt like, well, that's the end of that. Oh, but I've been hearing reports and hearing people come into the office every once in a while and talk about what God is doing and how God is moving in their lives and how God has opened up ministry for them, and they are still working and I mean, wasn't Sunday awesome? Wasn't Sunday incredible? The fact that we could actually come together and worship together, even if it is from a car and from me being 15, 20 feet up in the air. How awesome is that? God growing us. But this is time of preparation. This is time of us getting ready for what He's about to do. Just like He is with them. We have to be obedient in being prepared. So the people come up, they set up to the eastern limits of Jericho. And Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones taken from the Jordan. So the 12 stones are going to be placed in Gilgal. Every time they're going to remember what God did for them. Every time they look at those stones, they're going to remember that God had provided, that God made a way. And He said to the Israelites, when the children ask their fathers in the future, what is the meaning of these stones? You should tell your children, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. It's kind of funny because he's not selling the story at all. He's not hyping it up. He's not making it more than what it is. You talk about just the facts. He's giving them just the facts here. We crossed on dry ground. Don't you know that that's going to prompt more questions? Don't you know they're going to say, wait. What do you mean by that? And what an opportunity to be able to share what God did for them. To teach them about the presence of God, how God delivered them, how God used them. Verse 23, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you'd crossed over. Just as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed over. So he's saying, get this. The second time is never as exciting as the first time, is it? The first time has novelty to it. The first time has excitement built into it. The first time of anything. The first time has the sense of awe and wonder and that feeling of, well, we've never seen it like this before. We've never seen anything like this before. So there would be a real sense of kind of letdown. I mean, everybody knows about the Red Sea. You mention about the Red Sea to anybody, especially anybody who's grown up to church, you ask them, what is the Red Sea? Somewhere in their answer, they're going to say, oh, well, that's where Israel crossed over on dry land. That's where the waters parted. And you ask people, what is the Jordan River? Most people don't even know about this story. Most people don't even realize that this happened the second time. I mean, we talk about the Jordan. We talk about John the Baptist baptizing in it. We talk about Jesus being in the Jordan River. We talk about these things. We don't talk about Israel going across on dry land. Part of that's because it's the second time. Oh, well, that was so 40 years ago. God had already done that. When's the last time you parted waters and walked on dry land? When's the last time you've ever even seen that? It's amazing no matter when he does it. And so what he's doing here, he's trying to tell them, this is what God did. He did it at the Red Sea. He also did it right here. Here's the thing. For Israel, the plan is right now, they would never see the Red Sea again. God made a way. Now, what's the ultimate purpose? What's the ultimate purpose for all of this? Verse 24. This is so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord's hand is mighty. Stop right there for a second. This is fascinating. What he did not say. He did not say, this is so Israel will never forget. He did not say, this is so Israel would never not remember what he's doing. No. He says, this is so all people, Jews, Phoenicians, Hittites, Philistines, Jordanites, Syrians, Americans, Russians, Germans, the whole world, from Africa to Antarctica to, from the far east to the west, that we all may know that the Lord's hand is mighty. He parted the waters not once, but twice. First time, might be able to explain it away as a fluke. When he does it twice, it's a pattern. There's no doubt he can do it. God is able. And it feels like you're facing an insurmountable obstacle right now. I get it. This isolation I'm an introvert. Most of the 75% of the time, I'm going around singing, "This is the most wonderful time of the year." This is an introvert's dream. But even as an introvert, even as someone who loves alone time, this is a little much. This is a little much. I get it. We're facing some big obstacles right now. But we just read about a God who can make a way, who can provide a path, who can part the waters. He didn't just do it once, he did it twice. And there's nothing to say he can't do it a third time. He can make a way because his hand is mighty, his hand is strong. He is the Lord our God, and that's not a little thing. Here's the second part of this. All the people of the earth may know that the Lord's hand is mighty, and so that you may always fear the Lord your God. The fear of the Lord is an important thing. In fact, Proverbs says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's interesting to me that it doesn't say that knowledge of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the presence of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or experiencing the love of the Lord is the beginning of no. It says the fear of the Lord, because when you fear the Lord, you recognize his power. When you fear the Lord, you recognize who you are facing. When you fear the Lord, you understand that he is bigger than you. When you fear the Lord, you understand that he can do all things. When you fear the Lord, you know that he is all powerful. When you fear the Lord, you realize that you can't do it. When you fear the Lord, you understand you are smaller than he is. When you fear the Lord, you know that he can crush you in just the voice of his mouth. When you fear the Lord, it's because you know who he is and you know who you are. And fear's not a bad thing. Fear's not a bad thing. It defines the position of relationship between us and God. And by the way, there's a difference between having a fear of the Lord and being afraid of the Lord. I fear the Lord. Believe me, every time that I sin, I fear the Lord. Every time that I mess up, I fear the Lord. Every time that I feel like I'm not adequate, I fear the Lord. But because I know of his love and his grace and his mercy, I know his heart. I know that he calls me favored. I know he calls me his son. I'm not afraid of the Lord. Big difference. Big difference. And when we humble ourselves before him, we understand that God is not in a hurry, that he grows things and he can make a way. And we can trust him and we can follow in his path. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Just a couple things. First of all, once again, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming Sunday. Those of you that did. What an awesome service. What an incredible day. We're still riding high off of this thing. I so wish we could do that every Sunday. Um, we just can't. Um, Logistically speaking, it's just not a possibility for us. It doesn't mean that we'll never do it again. If for some reason this quarantine happens beyond April, then we're going to look at doing another one in May. So just kind of keep your eye out, keep your ear to the ground, and do that. Also, dessert auction stuff is going to be happening soon. You'll be hearing more about that as we go along. We are still making plans for summer, and which is why we're doing the dessert auctions. So we're still doing mission trips and stuff like that. We're waiting to hear. The Russian trip is kind of up in the air, so be in prayer for that. And also, hopefully next week, um, at some point next week, we're going to try to do an evening of worship and just a time for us to get online together and just it's just going to be Rick and I, and he's going to be leading some music. I'm going to be doing some short devotions, and it's going to all be centered around worshiping this great God that we have. And so I hope that you'll make plans. We'll give you more information about that as it goes along. As you can see, as you can hear, Corona has not stopped us. It's only changed how we do things. It hasn't stopped us from doing things. And so I told you from the beginning, this was an obstacle, but it wasn't going to stop who we are. That this was an opportunity for us. It's not an obstacle, it's an opportunity. It doesn't get in the way, it just provides a new way of doing ministry. And so that's what we're trying to figure out as we go along. Let me pray for you tonight, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. Lord, thank you so much for making a way. Thank you so much for providing what we need. And we just ask that you would bless us tonight. And